What's the safe word this week?
Uh, well, there's no safe word when it's just the two of us.
On that note, welcome back everybody to episode 41 of the Pregame Network podcast.
Yep.
No Joe today, just
Yeah.
Dan and Anthony.
Yeah. Small
Just the
scheduling
OGs.
snafu, but
Yeah.
still plenty to talk about.
Yep. Yeah, actually, this is probably a heavier week than usual, I would say.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff we've missed over the weeks and pushed off,
Yeah.
and plus it's just been very busy and hectic the last week. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as always, we will start off with what we've each been playing
Mhm.
and just go from there. So,
Yeah.
I'll go first. The list actually isn't even too long. You're also going to get a kick out of something, but so I've been playing a little bit of Witchfire. That's just a tiny bit. Nothing crazy there. And aside from that, you remember how I told you I started another playthrough of Nier?
Yes.
Yeah, I dropped it. I actually got to the same point that I did the last time that I started, and then I just was kind of like, something about it. I don't really know what. I didn't it didn't jive anymore, and I just was like, I'm just wasting my time, so I uninstalled it.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I'll be honest. Looking at Nier, I'm not gonna rant about my opinions on it, obviously, but looking at Nier, I will say that a lot of the things that are on a surface level, and the very strong opening it has tends to get a lot of people on board, even people who aren't necessarily going to jive with the rest of it. So I can kind of understand it because from a glance, it's definitely one of those games that really should be niche. I'm not going to say like, oh, it should have stayed in its lane and stayed underground because I fucking hate it, but I'm just saying like what it offers, especially when you look at the history of the developer and the series it branches off from, is definitely a more niche thing from what it offers, from story to gameplay to how you're expected to play it. So it doesn't really surprise me that it you didn't necessarily stick with it. Maybe third time's the charm. We'll review it again in 5
doubt
years.
I doubt it highly. It has a really strong opening, like you said.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
then once they let you loose in the world, then there's kind of like nothing going on. So I don't know. I think I was giving myself a little bit too much credit. And I've heard over the years that Near Automata or Automata, however the fuck you say it, it's a really good experience. You should play it. You won't be sorry. Blah blah blah. And this is now my second time trying to play it, and I'm just, eh. But when I dropped Near, I I reinstalled the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, and
Ah,
I have gone balls deep back into Mass Effect 2. It
excellent.
is just, it's so good, Anthony. It's
I
so good
love
for
those Mass Effect games.
every time. Like I don't even know how many times I've played through Mass Effect 2. Like over 10 at this point.
Yeah, a decent
And
chunk.
every single time I start a new playthrough, that opening is just fucking chef's kiss. It's just perfect. It's so good, especially coming off of the story of Mass Effect 1. Like, oh, surely nothing can happen to Shepard. He's the protagonist. Nope, they kill that motherfucker in the first 10 minutes.
It is a very
Um,
strong opening.
yeah, it's so good. I got half my squad assembled now, and I'm working on recruiting the other half, and then I'm gonna do the loyalty missions after that. And I can't help myself, but I'm doing another goddamn Paragon playthrough. I can't help it.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
that's one of the problems that I have, and it's not really a problem so much, but it's like Mass Effect when I play it, whether it's I try to do like a full series playthrough each time, or even if I'm picking it up and putting it back down. One of the things that I always struggle with is I always tend to fall into the same rut of playing it the same way. But
yeah,
it's like I like what I like. It's kind of hard to commit to a trilogy of games playing it a different way. So
yeah.
it's tough. But that's a fine problem to have. There are worse problems to have when it comes to playing games.
Yeah, and again, like it just Mass Effect 2 is my favorite game of all time, so I am definitely biased here, but
Yeah.
it's still a fucking masterpiece. Like it's such
Oh,
a
it
good
is.
game
It's a very
from
good
top
game.
to bottom.
Yeah, and even somebody like me who likes like I said, I like all the games. But the
Mhm.
nice thing about in your case, having Mass Effect 2 is you actually benefit from what a lot of people have as a complaint about Mass Effect 2, which is that the story is kind of separated from the core Reaper plot, right? In a lot of ways, like the whole aspect of the mission you build up to, and like what you're doing, and how you're kind of separated from what was built up in Mass Effect 1 because of that opening that we just talked about. It can, like, I wouldn't recommend it as a standalone experience, but it is definitely the easiest to play as a standalone experience on repeat playthroughs. I would say.
Yeah, it's such a good game, and everything about like the characters and the writing and the interactions between the squad mates, it's all great, all of it.
Top notch.
Yeah. So that's the main thing I've been playing this week. I've been dabbling a little bit in the Riftbreaker again. The Riftbreaker, have I talked about this with you yet?
Briefly, very briefly.
Yeah. It's a really cool combination of like isometric RPG / top-down twin stick shooter / RTS / base building, and it's a really, really, really cool, clever blend of all of those genres, and it's just a lot of fun, and it's very, very like aesthetically pleasing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know if I've actually seen the game outside of your descriptions of it.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good, and it got 3 different expansions, so it's
how old
popular, and it's definitely over. I want to say 5 years. I'm gonna find out. Yeah, it came out in 2021. Wow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just under that. But it's a really solid, competent like action RPG, base building RTS type of thing. Like you really can't fit it into one category because it's all of them, and it does it all really, really well. And like I said, it got 3 separate expansions, so there's people like it, and they just announced like a whole weapon overhaul. So
so it's still ongoing.
Yeah, it's still ongoing.
That's nice.
Yeah, but that's pretty much all I've been playing this week.
Okay.
Mass Effect and the Riftbreaker. That kind of, yeah. Anywho, what have you been up to?
So for me, it's pretty much been like the same old, same old. I've been very busy with a couple things that need to get out this month and next month, so I haven't necessarily had the opportunity to buckle down and really commit to anything. So I've been playing Genshin, Girls Frontline, Marvel Rivals when I have the chance. I'm still plugging away at Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, having a lot of fun with that still.
Okay.
Almost done, I think, basically, if my memory of the game is correct. I think I'm getting close to the end. And just on a whim, I wanted to go back and replay a game called Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. I might have mentioned this at one point, but have you ever heard of that game?
It sounds vaguely familiar. I don't know if it was you that... It was probably you that talked about it initially.
Yeah, it's essentially it's a reimagining of like the story told in Final Fantasy 1. It's like a very loose reimagining where it's like a guy from like the modern day, the modern regular Earth, gets teleported to the Final Fantasy world, and he's essentially the protagonist doing all the things that happened in Final Fantasy 1, but all of the areas are reimagined bits and pieces from the entire series, and the whole thing is wrapped up in like the Souls vein of ARPG that's so popular nowadays, but it's got the Final Fantasy job system. Anyway, all of those things that I just described, I'm a big fan of. I think the package is a lot of fun, and it's also got this... It's like I use this a lot to describe certain games, but it's almost like a B-movie because of how the humor is, because it's just this modern-day guy, fighting Final Fantasy characters, and he's a bit of like a stubborn dickhead, and he just wants to, he just wants to get the job done and whatnot, and he's very single-minded. It's a lot of fun, but I booted it up, Dan, and I was immediately fucking overwhelmed because it's one of those games where it's like the end game is like min-maxing stats and leveling up your like master class. Like, how Diablo, like even the shitty new ones have like when you're
shitty
at,
new ones.
when you're at the top, you're basically
how do you get that little jab in there?
Exactly. where you're doing the game's beaten, you're at max level, and you're doing incremental stat increases by rerunning the content over and over again. It's got a little bit of that in it. And it's kind of sad. Like, I kind of wish it didn't have the gear system it did. It's kind of unnecessary, but whatever. So I looked at it, I played it, I'm like, man, this is fun, but I don't remember at all what the fuck I'm doing, and I'm in endgame content, so I just shut it right off. I'm gonna have to like put a weekend or something aside to remember how to play that game, because it is a lot of fun, especially if you're a Final Fantasy fan, because there's a lot of like references and fan service. Like every single level, and like the ones that you go into repeat missions and the bosses and everything like that, every single level is based on a location from a different Final Fantasy. So it's like a nice little trip through these locations that have been reimagined. Cool. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, even if there are some questionable choices they made in it that I wouldn't have. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've been playing, just because I think this month will be probably the last busy month of mine for a while, just because there's a lot of shit I've been working on, so it's not a whole lot of variety gameplay-wise, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. So with that out of the way, I guess we can move on to the week's content, news, or whatever. I'm going to touch on the stuff that we decided to save for later that didn't make it into the last episode.
Yes.
It's nothing...
If that's the case, I'm actually going to lead with something, just because it's less news related and more it's addressing something that you asked, and I said we'll talk about it, and then we never did. So I'll just get it out now.
I don't even remember what it was, but sure.
You had asked me about Marvel Rivals. More specifically, you said you didn't get the obsession with it. You kind of had like this little like tearing your hair out moment where you're like, why is everybody so obsessed with the game? And I lined up a few things to kind of point to, but there's one thing really to address right off the bat is our friends. There's a little bit of bias there to explain that differently. Is like they have Call of Duty burnout. They have a tendency to chew up and spit out alternatives and substitute. Love them to death, but that part of the obsession is just because like they've found a thing that will temporarily not frustrate them until it does, and then that'll be like they will drop Marvel Rivals at a certain point because certain people are going to say like they don't want to play it anymore, because when hero shooters get frustrating, they get more frustrating than a Call of Duty gets frustrating.
Oh yeah.
But as far as the world at large playing it, there's a few things. First, I think that the release was very opportune for it. It kind of just dropped out of nowhere. There were betas, there were leaks, but it wasn't really on anyone's radar right until it released.
I don't remember any kind of marketing for Rivals at all.
The most marketing I got from it, marketing in quotes, is me seeing leaks for it way back when it was leaking for the first time, right? And so it kind of just dropped, and it dropped right at the tail end of the holiday season. So people needed something to play. People like to exaggerate this part, but having cool Marvel characters in a style that is at its best appealing and at its worst unique, that's a big draw for some people. I think some people like to over-exaggerate how important the Marvel part of this formula is, because it's really just a cast of characters they're drawing from, but that's a part of it. It's not harshly balanced around competitive matches, and so far they've pretty much committed to not doing that. Like every time somebody, like some would-be pro or some like I'm gonna dedicate my life to covering Marvel Rivals news whenever these people come up, they just kind of get ignored. They're just like, oh, add role queue, no. How about you balance this way, no. And they're just kind of doing their own thing, which is good. And then the other aspect of it I've touched on before is like the only other competition in the space was Overwatch, and Overwatch spent the last 9 years shitting itself. Seriously. So it's like some people were looking for a release, and all it takes is a developer making a game that doesn't necessarily hate you off the bat, isn't ugly for no reason. It's not trying to push something down your throat. Like there's not going to be a Pride Month event.
What you're saying is the bare fucking minimum.
Exactly. Like I talk like we remember that whole rant I went on a couple weeks ago where I was talking about, the Chinese are just making reasonable games and like they're swallowing up. It's that simple. It is that simple. There's like, because you're going to have an average guy who's going to come home from work. It's going to be in the middle of the summer, right? And he's going to be like, I feel like playing a hero shooter. Okay, you only have 3 options. You have Team Fortress 2, which is like which is a stringent. I love Team Fortress 2, but like I've said before, it's more of like hardline class-based thing, which you could play, but it's a bit harder. You could play Overwatch, which
hold on before you move on. Like, I also want to point out, like, Team Fortress 2 is very niche in the fact that one, like you need to be very plugged into the video game world to really kind of know of its existence at this point. It's so old.
I would
And two, you
say
need to have the technical means to do so because it's not like you can play it on the Orange Box anymore, can you?
no. Your option is to play it on the PC, like the console.
Exactly.
I don't know if the console port. Like you probably do server browsing, but nobody's really playing those versions anymore. It's like three
Yeah.
generations removed. I'm not even sure if they're backwards compatible. But anyway, so you have that option with Team Fortress 2 if you want to, go through the process to play something that is technically niche, even though I still think it's relatively popular. Um, or you could play Overwatch, which will have, very harsh balancing choices, very confused choices with the characters. Pride Month event will probably be going on, so you'll be forced to play on maps with the pride flags everywhere. Or you could just play the silly Marvel game that's not like beating your ass multiple ways, So it's your average person is going to gravitate to Marvel Rivals. If Overwatch was if in the last 3 years Overwatch was trending in a good direction, it would be a bit more of a competition, but like it just isn't. So that's why everybody's obsessed with it right now. There's nothing really else quite like it. And the one original idea that tried to do that like hates itself and the audience and is part of a company that probably has one of the biggest cases of brain drain in the industry for a legacy company. So that was to answer your previous question.
The question of why is everybody so obsessed with Marvel?
Exactly. And I
Marvel
do
Rivals.
think, yeah, and here's the thing. I've had this conversation with you and Joe before, just offhand. I don't think it's going anywhere just because, like I said, that lack of competition is such a big thing that they could really maintain it, but they are not like they're not resting on their laurels. They're committing to like, okay, we're going to do, more, we're gonna have a quicker release schedule of heroes than Overwatch ever did. We're going to not competitively balance anything. We're going to give you constant updates of costumes that are just appealing to look at and draw from a history of the comic books. And it's just like they are not like just going to sit there and say like, oh, we'll do a costume, like we'll do an event maybe once a year and, we'll release a hero every 3 to 4 months. No, they're going to do like 2 every month and a half to 3 months or something like that. They're going to keep supporting this. And it's
Yeah, well, the nice part about this is that the job is basically half done for them already. Not like Overwatch, where you have to create a new character with an archetype and persona from scratch. Like everything is already there.
Listen, that is a huge part of it. I definitely say, but like, if Overwatch had spent at any point in the last 6 years really building up that story base and really building up that world that was teased all the way back in 2016, they would be able to compete with Marvel Rivals. Like it would.
Yeah,
it
no,
would
I
be,
agree.
It that there's more freedom in that than in just adapting the comic book stuff. So it's just it's on Overwatch for that one. And the last thing I'll really say is that in response to this, like Blizzard's just like, there are things coming down the line that'll blow your mind. Unbelievable changes are coming. I'm like, yeah, you say that now because, somebody's eating your lunch. But it's like they're on the verge of like re-adding 6v6 into like just the game proper, which will officially mark. Yeah, that will officially.
They removed it.
Yeah, so going from Overwatch 2 to Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2, one of the changes that they said, like, hey, we're gonna make the tanks different, and we're gonna balance it around 5v5 instead of 6v6, right? And this entire time they've been toying with it and teasing with it coming back. Dan, if 6v6 comes back to Overwatch 2, every single selling point for Overwatch 1 getting a sequel in the first place will be gone. Every single thing will have been cut or removed or scrapped or undone. And that's like embarrassing on its own, even if I do like the 6v6 better than the 5v5. So that's that when it comes to Marvel and Overwatch.
Well, thank you for answering my question.
I'm glad I could be of assistance.
All right, well, moving on from there, some of the things that we didn't get to. There's only 2 things that I wanted to talk about that we didn't get to last week. I don't know about you. First off is Destiny related.
Yes, fill me in because I know next to nothing outside of that.
This means nothing to you, but it's pretty significant to anybody who actually likes Destiny.
Go for it.
So, like, you are aware of the fact that they have been steadily porting over content from Destiny 1 over to Destiny 2, yes?
I have heard, but I don't remember any of the specifics.
Okay, well, they've been bringing back like a very handsome amount of content from Destiny 1 that is like quote unquote fan favorite into Destiny 2. This ranges anywhere from weapons all the way to raids, and the raids have probably been the biggest selling point or biggest uh, pro for
in this
Bungie.
whole movement.
Yeah, yeah,
I will say that the one consistent thing I've heard from you, my brother, and my other friends that played the Destiny series have said that almost universally that the Destiny 1 raid content is like
it's way better.
a league above Destiny 2.
Yeah, it's way better. Although the later raids for D2 are also very good, but that's neither here nor there. The raid that is basically the community's number one fan favorite that people have been clamoring for Bungie to bring back is called Wrath of the Machine. It was one of, if not the final raid for Destiny 1. I was not as big into D1 as I am into Destiny 2, so I never even played the raid, so I couldn't really tell you what it was all about. I know it's
that
like,
might be why I've never heard of it before this point. I figured
okay.
something of such a claim I would have heard of.
Yeah. So the Wrath of the Machine, everybody that played D1 that also plays D2 wants them to bring Wrath of the Machine back into D2. And Bungie recently came out and said that they've officially confirmed that Wrath of the Machine, it's not going to be coming back anytime soon. They are quote unquote prioritizing new content instead. And as somebody who likes the franchise overall, that loves, like, the best thing to do in Destiny is to raid. Like, that's obvious to anybody who's ever played the game. Even though such a low percentage of players of the Destiny player base has even raided once, but whatever.
That seems to be, honestly, that seems to be a common practice in a lot of MMOs and MMO like
yeah,
games
well, it's
like
hard
Destiny.
to get 6 different people
Yeah.
together that all want agree upon a common goal, that have the communication skills and the patience to deal with each other for a several hour gaming
I like
session.
that deal with each other.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. I've been a part of so many LFGs that, like, you get to a certain point and somebody isn't doing what they're supposed to after having it explained several times, that the party just completely falls apart and everyone goes their separate ways. So them not bringing back Wrath of the Machine, everyone's like, what the fuck? Like, you bring back Vault of Glass and King's Fall and all these other raids and older content, you're not going to do the best one that you've ever done. It's interesting, especially in the current Destiny climate, that player morale and population is at an all-time low, like worse than it has ever been.
Yeah.
And like, you have the opportunity to bring back one of the most fondly remembered raids, like the community over, and you don't do, like, I don't understand the decision-making process there, but I also don't have that big of a horse in that race because I never played Wrath of the Machine to begin with. So it doesn't affect me as much as you would think, even though I am like a pretty avid Destiny player. I just found it perplexing to me because, like, they had this gold mine of a raid content that is just sitting there and they're actively deciding to not bring it forward. But, whatever. That's not, again, like, I can't stress enough how much maybe the impact is the right word, like how much of a lack of impact this has for me because I never played it. But yeah, like, I just found it interesting. That was one of the small things that I wanted to touch on that we never got to last week. Yeah. So beyond that, the last thing that I wanted to touch on that we didn't get to was the state of the next Mass Effect development.
Hold the phone.
Yep.
Because we have to lead into this properly if we're going to talk about it, because I think this is about BioWare as a whole, personally.
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah, so I know in the past I said we were pretty much done talking about Veilguard, but more things have come out and it pertains to the company as a whole, so let me get that out and then we'll talk about BioWare. So Veilguard, even though I had my guesses, I said a while ago that I wanted to wait until the dust had settled, and it has definitely settled. The final official numbers are out with EA's investor report. Did you hear about this?
Yeah, so I heard, before you continue, let me know how far off base I am, but
Let's see.
they used very interesting vernacular when describing the sales. They didn't say, like, copies sold or units moved or anything like that. It was
a big part
players engaged with the game. So, like,
yes,
that could mean, okay, so we're talking about the same thing.
Yes, we are talking about the same exact thing. That's important. You kind of jumped on my surprise, but that's a big part of it. It landed at 1.5 million.
Which
Uh,
even players engaged, which all that means is that people went hands on with the game, whether it's from
yes,
free trials or purchases
yes,
or what, like anything in between. One
exactly.
million is
A lot,
still
a lot
a
of
horrifically low number for a
a
game like
lot,
Dragon
yes,
Age.
a lot of games and companies do this. My favorite one is Arc System Works with Guilty Gear. Whenever they announce a new sales metric, they always do, oh, it's like 500,000 copies sold, 1 million players played, and then like 250 like million, but it's like as if you walked by it and looked at it or whatever. But anyway,
Yeah.
back to EA. It landed at 1.5 million. And we discussed it before, where I'm just like, my guess was that the game would land at a decently high number that would not be high enough for EA, and that's pretty much where it landed, because that's 50% short of what it needed to be by EA's metrics. And that's like you mentioned at the beginning, that's not sales. That includes EA Play subscriptions and console buy-ins, like the console tie-ins with like.
It could also be people who purchased the game, played for like an hour, and then exactly.
Yeah. So that, like, I would have said like 1.5 million, maybe 1.2 million is respectable but low. But with those metrics where it's just player, what was it? Player engaged, player encounters, players engaged.
It was players engaged. Yeah,
that is disgustingly low.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And
it's terrible.
that's absolutely, like, Dragon Age,
especially for a Bioware flagship game.
If Bioware makes it out of this after Mass Effect 5 not shut down like every other EA studio that has gone through the same exact fucking thing and is closed down, Dragon Age is like dead. Like, I don't know where
every Bioware IP is going to be dead.
Yeah, but Dragon Age is fucking dead. It's funny because I saw a developer who worked on the game was coping. He said something like, he's just like, Dragon Age is dead. It belongs to you, the players, with the art and the fan fiction. I'm just like, okay, that's definitely fucking dead. Jesus Christ. But yeah, and before we talk about Mass Effect, because you're going to talk about like the development of that, right? I think the entire
kind of sort of. The article I'm referring to is only like a couple paragraphs long.
Okay, so as more things happen at Bioware and as there's fallout from the Veilguard team, the entire writing staff is gone. They're no longer at Bioware. The entire writing staff. That includes like the lead writers.
I would argue that's a positive thing, honestly.
Well,
like compared.
No, yeah, but here's the thing about this, Dan. These guys fail upwards, so they're just somebody else's problem. Like the writers. Like 2 or 3 of the writers are now working on Ghost of Yotei. So good luck with them, I guess, working on that. And the director, he's been hired by Wizards of the Coast, so that's a D&D problem.
Oh, wow.
But so we'll see where all this fucking goes. But yeah, that's just the fallout from Veilguard. What a fucking disaster for the company.
Right. But, I mean that leads perfectly into the article that I wanted to talk about. Okay, I'm reading the headline. It's by a guy named Muhammad Ali Bari, who's written on January 22nd. It says, next Mass Effect development still in early stages as team focuses on other EA projects, says Mark Dara. He's like one of the higher-ups at BioWare. He was like one of the top producers on Anthem, actually. I don't know if he was involved with making that game fun, because I still don't... Okay, I gotta go off on a little bit of a tangent here.
Yes.
You know where I'm going with this, too.
I know where you're going with this.
Out of all of the looter shooters that I've played, Destiny fucking included, Anthem was probably the #1 most fun, best feeling game among them.
That game felt good to play.
Coming from you, of all fucking people,
yes,
like, that's an endorsement.
I've been waiting for them to skin that game and use its bones for something else since we fucking played it.
God, fuck it, like anything. Even one of the developers, I never linked this, but I read it in passing. Like, one of the developers weeks ago was like, if they wanted to remake Anthem and do it right this time, I would be on board. Like, the fact that BioWare let that game die, I will never forgive them for that. Because it was just so much fun. And yeah, the loot system was completely fucking broken. The replayability was not there. But you know what? Games that were worse off have come back better.
Yeah, I was gonna say, of all the games that are like kept on life support, that are like just brought back from the depths, like Anthem had gameplay worth salvaging.
Oh, it was such a fun fucking game. And it was like, it was like mindless shooting and explosions and shit, but And I'm still butthurt about that, like almost 10 years later, however
Yeah.
long it's been gone for. But between the technical issues and the gameplay, not the gameplay, the writing and the different loot systems that were in it, yeah, it was not good. But I would still log in daily because it was just fun to fly around and use the
Yeah.
abilities and shoot shit. And I can't stress enough the fact that you are on the same page with me with this is like all of the proof that I need that it was a really good game.
Yeah.
Anyway, going back to the original topic at hand, BioWare is moving almost everybody off of Mass Effect 5 to work on other quote unquote EA projects. And I think I said this to you in private, but like all I read from that is they don't care about Mass Effect. And
Either
God,
that
I
or they're
hope I'm
not
wrong.
confident in it. You know?
Yeah, that too. I really hope I'm wrong. But Mass Effect 5 is going to need all the love that it can get.
Yeah.
And BioWare, as it stands now, is just not in a position to give it that love. Um,
It feels like, honestly, and this could be just as a result of the reception of Veilguard. I think at a certain point, BioWare was primed, and their position was just like, listen, regardless of how you or I feel about the people actually working on these games, and when I say primed, I mean they were set and they had their vision set. They're just like, we're gonna come back swinging. We have two of our most revered properties. We have Mass Effect. We have Dragon Age. We're gonna make two great new games, right? That was their position with that. That's where they were sitting with that, right? And I think the reception to Veilguard and the fact that they've been kind of dragging their feet in getting Mass Effect 5 even off the ground, like, because every report in between trailers has been like early stages, like they haven't even started fucking working on the game yet. So I just feel like they were so spooked by Veilguard that they either want to like get something new off the ground that doesn't have the baggage or the expectations that their existing series and franchises would have, or B, want to wait until they have a team they're confident in working on the game full time. One of those two, maybe even both.
I think it's a combination of both. I
Yeah.
think that Veilguard flopped so hard that they basically went back to the drawing board and probably started rewriting the entire game.
Yeah. I mean, because
Like,
even without all the bullshit that we talk about on a nearly weekly basis, like following up the Mass Effect trilogy has like that's like
a monumental task.
yeah, there's so much, like I said, baggage there.
Yeah.
Where it's
Oh,
just
which
like,
reminds me, after I'm done with Mass Effect 3, I think I'm gonna go back to Andromeda and
give
I've
it
only
another
played through it
shake.
once. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
I think
that's
I'm
a
gonna
rough
try it
one.
again and see how I feel about it
There's a
now.
lot to say
Like,
about Andromeda, but it's like if Mass Effect 5 and whatever comes after it was at the level that Andromeda was, I wouldn't be happy with it.
yeah, that's fair. I still want to see how I feel about it.
Yeah, Andromeda. We'll talk about it when you get around to playing it. But like Andromeda has a lot of faults, and it's also the earliest stages of all the bullshit that we talk about now, kind of seeping into Bioware, being activated in Bioware. So
Yeah. All right. Well, now that that stuff is out of the way, we can get to the news proper because I think we have a pretty
it's pretty
good
stacked.
amount of stuff to talk about. Yeah. All right. So going off of the first thing that I found this week, just reading the headline from Pure Xbox, People Can Fly, the developers, they made Outriders and Bulletstorm. People Can Fly becomes official co-developer for Gears of War E-Day. I think that's a good thing. I think that is a W.
So there's two things to take away from that. One, if there was a developer to pick to say, hey, we need help making this, right? It would be People Can Fly. I think that their work with Outriders alone would make me confident that they could help make a Gears of War game. I think that's like the right labor to outsource to. Two, I express great skepticism and worry when a company like the Coalition requires assistance.
Okay,
and
that's fair.
The reason I say that is not because it's like a big AAA studio. Shit happens. I don't like outsourcing, but like in the right amounts, it can work. Like that's Super Smash Brothers was an outsourced game, and with the right guys at the head and the right people working on it, you can make anything work.
Yep.
Coalition was formed to make nothing but Gears of War. So I worry when a company like that is struggling to do the one thing it's built to do. So, it's potentially a good thing, they're shoring up the sides, but it's like the fact that there's like a foreseeable need for co-development is worrying. That's my only real comment on that, because E-Day is one of the games I'm looking forward to just from everything we've been sold on. And although I do not like hearing the news of outsourcing, they would be the ones to outsource to.
Yep, that's fair. I saw that and I was like, oh, okay, like it could be worse. Like that was my initial takeaway.
Yeah, that's probably that's a glass half full way to look at it. That's definitely a better way to look at it than my dour skepticism of the industry, which is permeant in nearly fucking everything I say.
Yeah. All right. I mean, that was a pretty quick one.
That's good to report upon.
Yeah. Do you have anything like relatively small that you want to touch on? Because I have a bunch of stuff like stacked up.
The smallest thing I can really say is that I posted about this. No one really gives a shit though. Is that MultiVersus is shutting down?
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to have its fifth season starts in 2 hours, 3 hours maybe.
Oh really?
Yeah, they're going to add 2 characters. They put out a trailer where they posted a bunch of costumes that you can earn for free because they shut down their premium services. And I just got to say, like, it expounds to it goes to a greater conversation about platform fighters, because apparently everybody will say, oh, it's impossible to make, only Smash Brothers can do it. And I just think that everybody fucking sucks at this, because like they just don't put their best foot forward with this. MultiVersus, Dan, it's a platform fighter. It's WB properties and anything that WB can get their hands on to collaborate with, right?
Yep.
Its existence is like a 4-year span of leaks and rumors and data mining that showed that they had like the content stacked up, right? Like the very first leak, just from a content standpoint, had Lord of the Rings characters in it, right? There's still, to this day, as the game is closing, there's no Lord of the Rings character in the game. It took them 2 years to start adding Cartoon Network properties to the game. At primetime Cartoon Network, like when we were kids, like all those characters, it took them forever to get those things in there. They have fucked the gameplay balancing so many times where it's just like, oh, it's doing its own thing, but it's like they chased that competitive balancing the same way that all these other studios do, and it ended up being a slow, floaty mess. And then they weren't confident in their own design decisions, so they started stealing shit from Super Smash Brothers, and it just turned into this fucking mess. And the entire time, you had a belligerent staff, because this was going on around the time where like apparently when like everybody hated Harry Potter because of J.K. Rowling and her stances, right? Yeah. Apparently, the very first season of the game was supposed to have Harry Potter characters added to it, but like people on the team threatened to quit because of how much they did not like. Yeah, so and I think some of the team members did quit.
Bunch of fucking assholes.
The guy who led the team basically just used this game and its development to kind of propel himself into the forefront as like a micro celebrity. It's squandered potential from top to bottom that really needs to be studied. I enjoyed it for what it was. It was just a fucking disaster. It launched twice. It's just a nightmare, and it's closing, and it's just another. It's just a mess. It's just a disaster. And
no other way to put it.
There's no other way to really put it. Apparently, leading from this, Warner Brothers is going to lift embargoes on certain things, because Warner Brothers has not been collaborating with like anyone in the video game space, because they wanted to save all of that power for MultiVersus. So going forward, we are probably going to see a lot more Warner Brothers crossover stuff where applicable. So like I wouldn't be surprised if we started seeing like Cartoon Network stuff in Fortnite and shit like that. That's just a notable ripple effect we're going to see. And that pretty much closes the book on Warner Brothers gaming, because now they're just going to stick to those 4 things that they had mentioned.
They published the Arkham series?
No, that's right. Yeah, they published it. They have Batman is still a focus for them, but when I say Warner Brothers games, it's like MultiVersus was the odd man out of their new strategy. Remember when they said they only wanted to focus on 4 things going forward?
Yeah.
MultiVersus was like the odd one out It was
I
the
see.
one holdover. So now it's just that Warner Brothers has their focuses, and there's not going to be any wild cards. I think MultiVersus squandered whatever like willingness Warner Brothers had as like a property owner to do anything outside of the safest and safest. So it's going to be Batman, Game of Thrones. What were the other two? I think one was Harry Potter, and there was a fourth one that I can't remember. And that's the only stuff they're going to be willing to do for like the foreseeable future.
Yeah, well, after Hogwarts Legacy was as successful as it was, like I'm
Yeah.
surprised they haven't announced the sequel yet.
Harry Potter is such a weird IP when I think
How
about it.
so? Like Legacy was
It's
yeah, Hogwarts Legacy was very good. I
no,
enjoyed it
it's
a lot.
when I say weird, it's like there's so many elements that go into it. Like a beloved franchise with a creator who is reviled by the most vocal and nasty people online. So it's like everything that they do with this IP, they gotta like tiptoe, but like they're tiptoeing into like success because it's just like you just can't be too vocal about it,
Yeah.
and you'll just sell millions. So I don't know. That was just something that came to mind. Is whenever I think of Warner Brothers and whenever I think of Harry Potter, I just immediately think of like all the cultural and political shit, but it's still like a juggernaut when it's played safe. So yeah. So
Yeah.
Warner Brothers, multiverses. That's all I had with the smaller stuff.
Okay. Well, another small thing that I have is Space Marine 2, Saber, the people who published Space Marine 2, they kind of addressed the content drought that the game
Oh,
has
thank
been
God.
going through. Yeah. Like the biggest complaint with this game was that like it's really fucking good. It's a lot of fun to play. Everyone who remotely likes Warhammer 40K is all about it. But like you play through the 6 or 7 operation missions that they have now, and that's kind of it. And the skill
Yeah.
tree kind of sucks. And the PvP mode Eternal War, that's like there's only so much fun to be
It's
had
good
there.
for
You
what it
don't.
is, but it's not
Yeah, exactly.
it's not what
Yeah,
everybody came to do. It's just a
yeah.
nice little emoji tack on.
So I mean, they have their roadmap. They're going to be adding a bunch of stuff, including a horde mode, which should have been there from the beginning. But I
Yeah,
digress.
we've discussed that ad
Yeah, we've
nauseum.
beaten that horse to death.
Yeah.
But basically, the thing of substance that I wanted to talk about with that Saber said was that uh, we really appreciate everyone's enthusiasm and passion for the game. We're very proud of what we made. As far as content goes, like we're really just focused on putting out a well-built, polished um, set of content as opposed to putting out as much as we can as quickly as we can. Now,
Yes.
there's a little bit to unpack there because on one hand, I do agree with them. Like, it's going to be much better for you to put something out that's not completely broken or buggy or glitchy or just half baked, and just do that as opposed to like, let's just see how much shit we could jam through the door as quickly as possible, and hope something sticks. Because Saber has a very long history of supporting their games for the long haul, even the games that are not really that popular anymore. Like, I mean, the very first one that comes to mind is World War Z. That
Okay.
game is still getting expansions,
Is
and
it
it
now?
came out. Yeah, yeah, it just got the Sin City expansion like recently, and that like takes place in Vegas. And this game came out in September of 2021, and it's not like you hear a lot about this game on a regular basis. It has its niche audience who probably play it daily, um, but that's pretty much it. Like it's sitting at a very positive rating on Steam, which is good to see. Uh, and like I said, it just got another like major update with new weapon skins and character skins and new map. Like it's a new campaign, I think, with more board maps to play on and whatnot. But the point being is that they're still supporting it, and
Yes.
Saber has a very long and storied history of supporting their games, and I am okay with waiting for this content to come out polished and fully built out, especially if I'm going to be getting Space Marine 2 content for like 5, 6, 7 years down the road. So it it's a double-edged sword, but I'm still okay with it overall.
It goes back to that discussion we had a while ago about like the different types of DLC and live service. Like you had brought up to me a while ago about how Helldivers 2 intends to become Helldivers 3 through its live service, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I brought up that triangle, which I've still forgotten the name of, the trifecta, which is like good, cheap, and quick, right? And how you can't have all three.
Yeah.
So
you can only take two.
Exactly. Like that's the route they're going for, where it's polished, but it takes fucking forever. It's like, it's if I had just purchased it for myself, right, and I didn't have you and Eric to play with, I would probably be a bit more disappointed in that. Just because I prefer, I prefer my content reasonably well in games that I'm enjoying, and I don't think that Space Marine, as much as I love the gameplay, I'm not knocking the gameplay, I feel like it's not depthful enough for it to carry me through content that is spread out that much, if that makes sense, right?
I see what you're saying, and I think this kind of goes into what they're doing with the skill tree. Apparently, they're supposed to be overhauling the skill tree because it is not very deep. It like, oh, pick this thing. Okay, it's plus 15% to melee damage, for example. Like, it doesn't really work with anything else. It's just here's a flat buff to your character, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's not a good. Yeah, it's not a good way to build to build out your Space Marine the way that you want. And I think that the fact that they are reworking the skill tree is a huge, it's a huge plus for the game overall.
Yeah, that's a side of like polish and quality assurance that can definitely alleviate all portions of a game when you don't necessarily have the content. So
because I'll go back and play missions just to fuck around with different combinations of skills, but I can't really do that right now because like the 10 that I have or whatever the number is. There's no synergy there. It's just like, oh, here's a bonus to X amount of things.
If one day in the future you said to me, hey, Anthony, let's go play some Space Marine 2, and I booted up a game that had like maybe 2 to 3 new operations, a horde mode, and a revamped skill tree, that sounds like a good time. That sounds like
exactly what they plan on doing.
Yeah, so that it's like it just comes down to the waiting game, I guess, and jumping back in at the right time to get the most out of the content.
That's fine to me also, because there's so much shit to play that I'll put down Space Marine for 6 months or whatever and come back to it when all the shit that I want is there. Like, I'm fine with that. Like, so the trifecta that you were talking about between cheap, polished, and quick, I'm okay with paying a premium as long as I get what I want and it's not broken, and if it comes out in a reasonable amount of time, then that's just a bonus. We've always, like, both you and I, we've always had this stance where, like, I'm okay with waiting however long it takes to make the game good. I don't care if it takes 6 months or a couple years. Like, if you're gonna make the game good that I want to play, that I'm very interested in spending money on, I'll wait however long you want to take to build it. Just don't burn me,
Yeah.
So anywho,
I get that. Yeah.
I think it's not as small as I thought, but we kind of tore into that a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
We already talked about Rivals, so I'm gonna skip that one. Do we have anything else that's okay? I'm gonna go through my small things. There's like 2 or 3, more small things. One, which I know we both found this pretty humorous, but I think it was Dr. Disrespect's studio. I think it was called Midnight Society.
Yes.
They're closed. They're done after 3 years. That's funny.
3 years and no games.
3 years and no games.
Yeah, it's
Sucks
like, listen, you can say whatever you want about Dr. Disrespect. I'm not fond of the guy, and I obviously has those weird allegations around him. Our friends liked him for a while for some reason. They'll deny it now because of all the shit that came out.
Until the allegations came out.
Yeah, but it's like, I do find it interesting that like the company like essentially grandstanded, because you should obviously take allegations like that serious, but like you should also have some skepticism in this day and age, and it looks like he's going to beat the allegations allegedly. So we'll see what happens. But the whole point is, I just find it funny that he essentially co-founded this studio. They dumped him immediately, and then 3 years on, there's no games and there's nothing, and they couldn't survive without his backing and clout. So
just a wet fart.
Yeah, whole lot of nothing.
So yeah, that's a thing that happened. I'm not even going to go too much into it, but it is somewhat newsworthy.
I just find it funny because like I don't want to knock it too much, but the game that they were hyping up, it was just like they wanted to do first person shooters, but they also had like the grand plan of like, we're gonna make genres nobody's ever done before, and it's like an extraction shooter with NFTs in it. I'm just like, okay.
Anytime anybody mentions an NFT, I just mentally check the fuck out.
Yeah,
Nope,
because
not for
it's like,
me.
listen, here's I don't want to go nuts on the NFTs. I
Yeah,
do see the
please.
potential in that technology. Nobody is chasing NFTs for potential. Anyone still doing that is still just trying to do quick money scams. It's possible
Yes.
in the future someone's somewhere will make NFTs like a good thing. Like I think it has a place in like ambitious continued services within sequels and series and stuff like that. But I don't think like I think there are better ways to do it, and nobody doing it right now is doing it to benefit you or me or anyone. It's just it's all a scam or a gimmick. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on from that, the next small thing is Killing Floor 3 finally has a release date. It's coming out
Hey.
March 25th, and I still remain cautiously optimistic and just a little bit of hype.
Okay.
You know my history with Killing Floor. I played both of them.
Yep.
I love both of them. Killing Floor 2 is definitely better than 1 in my opinion. It's just a really good time. It's like if you took it's just a horde shooter, but really fleshed out, and I love that shit. And I know I ranted about this like maybe over a month ago at this point, but you know how I was talking about how the way like the direction they're taking Killing Floor 3, where they're gonna have like all of these specialists that have different strengths, and like one guy is good at melee, one guy is good at like
Yeah,
longer
we talked
range, like
about
you
it.
know, yeah, and people are not a fan of that, even though the perk system that exists in Killing Floor 2 now is more or less like the same type of thing, and Killing Floor 3 is just more. It's kind of an evolution of that. It's more rigid, maybe. I don't know for
Hmm.
sure. I haven't played it yet, but people are not a fan of that. And allegedly, Tripwire Interactive wanted to include the specialists in Killing Floor 2. They just didn't have the time or the resources to do it. Now they're finally getting the opportunity to do it in the third game, and I'm on board. Like I eagerly await to see how they handle that, and the gameplay looks like a lot of fun. The like neo futuristic weapons that they going for, and you can now finally customize your weapons. You were not able to do that in the first two games. I'm very interested to see how this game plays, and I'm trying to get into the closed beta that's coming out in a few weeks, I think. I don't know
Okay.
exactly know the date, but I'm trying to get into it. But yeah, the game launches on March 25th, and I'm very, very, very curious. But that was my only other small
Yeah,
thing that I wanted to
getting
speak
closer to it.
about. Yeah. Um. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, Atomic Heart keeps on getting expansions, fucking
Yeah.
inexplicably. I'm shocked by this, but cool. If you like it, then great.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
I've got nothing to add on Atomic Heart. It was a bit of a dull squib for me.
Yeah, I only played a couple hours of it. It was the coolest feature that game had is that you press and hold one button and your character auto loots everything in your field of view. It is so convenient.
Oh, that's a
But
nice feature. I don't even remember
yeah,
using that feature.
yeah, yeah. You press and hold whatever button it is. I don't know what it is on controller, but like you're like I'm gonna call it an Omni tool because I don't know what the name of it is in the game, but your Omni tool thingy, like it comes out of your palm, and like you see all the drawers and cabinets open in front of you, and you just loot everything that is in the drawers and the cabinets, and it was just such a huge time saver. It was also pretty aesthetically pleasing to look at. So that's the only like really cool thing that I remember from the game. Um, but yeah, that was another small thing that I
Yeah.
had. What else is here?
Mm.
Star Citizen. Ah, Jesus, again. Um, one of the biggest budget video games ever is finally set to release, and they're just talking about Squadron 42, which is the single player version of Star
Oh
Citizen. The persistent universe. Who
yeah.
the fuck knows when that's coming out?
Yeah.
It
This is
is
like the
according to Cloud Imperium Games, it is officially going to launch at some point in
oh boy,
2026.
some point,
Yeah,
eh?
yeah. Who knows what that means? But that's a thing that I read the article. I'm not going into it because it just retreads a bunch of information that we both already know.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
I'm very excited for Star Citizen to leave its early access milking period and enter its Grand Theft Auto Online post
yeah, for
launch
real, right?
period. Holy shit! It's like
Yeah.
imagine. I mean, I can't even fault them at this point. Imagine like you trip and you look at what you tripped over, and it's just like a source of money that will just last for like a
You
quarter of
tripped
your
over a
life.
literal golden egg.
Yeah, like Jesus Christ, like I can't even imagine. Like remember
Yeah.
like when they found like the CEO or whatever, he was out on a yacht or something, and I'm just like, man, that was a lot of money. That was years ago at this point.
That was the
Jesus
price of
fuck.
one ship in the game.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so that's a thing that's happening
Yeah.
finally.
Hmm.
See, like what perplexes me the most is that Squadron 42, the single player component of Star Citizen, it has an unbelievably stacked cast of
Yeah,
actors in this single player
that's
campaign.
the first thing I heard about
Yeah,
Star Citizen
yeah.
ever was
Like
like this this AAA experience within this live service game that has just a shit ton of actors that everybody knows.
that like these actors are in like they're very recognizable. Gillian Anderson from The X-Files, fucking Mark Hamill, he was Luke fucking Skywalker.
Yeah,
Henry Cavill is I think the guy is like the player character. Gary Oldman is an admiral.
yeah.
I don't remember his first name, but something Cunningham. He was in Game of Thrones. He played Sir Davos. He's in the game. Mark Strong. He's another admiral. There is so many very well-known actors that have lended their likeness to this
Yeah.
game, and it's just like snake oil. Like I don't, it's they've got nothing to show for it, which you would think would
It'll
piss
come out
off the
eventually.
actors who have whose likenesses have been used that are I don't know how much they got paid, but
It's a paycheck.
I mean the game has a budget of fucking $730 million.
Yeah.
Like what? And it's still barely in an alpha state. Like I can't talk about this anymore. We've beaten this horse to death several
Yeah.
times over. All right,
It's just
you
it's one
need
of
to
those it's just one of those ongoing stories that gets more incredulous each time you hear
yeah.
about it. It's like how many times like imagine a car accident that just went on for like days. Like how much can you really say about the car
It's like
accident at this
watching a
point?
GIF over and over again and expecting it to change.
Yeah.
Anyway, please talk about something that you have up your sleeve.
Oh god, I honestly, outside of all the new stuff that we were talking about, I don't have much. I wanted to bitch about fighting games, but like I don't want to take up the remainder of this, and I'll
Well,
probably like, go ahead.
well, we could talk about like the nice big juicy thing that happened today. Actually,
Yeah,
today is February 3rd.
yeah,
The
hit me.
biggest thing that happened today is we finally got some snippets of the next Battlefield gameplay.
Ah,
Um,
yes.
yeah, and the only reason I want to bring this up is one, I'm a big Battlefield fan, so there's that. Two, 2142 was fucking abysmal, or 2042 was abysmal.
2042.
Yeah,
2142 is the one that
2142 was
Joe
very
really
good.
likes.
Yeah, it was
That
a really good
everybody was.
game.
Yes.
Yeah, 2042 was fucking abysmal. It did everything that you don't want to do in a Battlefield game, which is just hilarious to me. But whatever. So anyway, Battlefield released this like 5.5 minute kind of like developer documentary sort of video, where they have like all the talking heads of the leads of the studios like describing what they're doing, and they showed like 15 seconds of gameplay roughly. Um, Now, this is the little bit that they showed, like it actually looked like Battlefield. It was chaotic. It was a ton of environmental destruction, which is
Yes.
exactly what you want in a Battlefield game. It takes place in modern times, which I am always a fan of. I love the modern setting for.
Yeah, I don't mind it as much as some people do, and it is definitely like one of the safest eras to like latch on to if you wanted to like kind of recover from some egg on your face.
Yeah, so the big takeaway of this 5.5 minute video from like all the big Battlefield YouTubers and people like the influencers or whatever is that it seems to be really channeling the spirit of Battlefield 3 and 4, which is a net positive. Battlefield 3 and 4 are, largely regarded as the best Battlefield games, also including Battlefield 1. Battlefield 1 was just like from that succeeded in every metric that you would, score a Battlefield game off of.
Yeah.
But I say Battlefield 3 and 4 because those two take place in modern era. So does this one, which is why I'm directly comparing it to that. And then this 15 seconds of gameplay, it had the main title score of Battlefield 3 attached to it. So they're really pulling on the nostalgia strings, which is fine as long as you can deliver on it. Graphically, it looked great. And I really can't stress enough how good the destruction looked because there was this one like 0.5 second or 1 second snippet of this guy loading an RPG and then firing it into the side of a building, and you could clearly see like the ripple effect that this explosion had. It just destroyed the building, which is everything that you would want as a Battlefield fan. And it looked really, really good. It was only 10 or 15 seconds long, but it looked really good. I have learned the hard way to not trust that.
Yes, thank you, God. If you weren't gonna take the wind out of your own sails, I was going to, because like,
I'm not trying to like gush over it, but
no, I get that. It looks good, but those snippets that we both saw.
Oh yeah, no, I know. Yeah.
Were completely curated and scripted to get everybody on board after Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 2042. It was definitely like there's it's what Joe always likes to point out, which is like you're just a random schmuck in the army and you're disposable, and it's like there were no operators to be found. There was nobody shouting "What a time to be alive," something that the series will likely never live down. There was just raw gameplay that is meant to tug at the nostalgia that people have when the series was, I don't want to say at its peak, but like at its most consistent.
Yeah, that's a good adjective. Definitely most consistent. Now, okay, so the big takeaway from the trail, from like this Vidoc or whatever you want to call it, is not the gameplay. For me personally, it was when Vince Zampella was the talking head, and so he is now the general manager of the Battlefield IP, and this guy, if you don't know, for whoever's listening, if you don't know the name Vince Zampella, he is likely who you have to thank for how modern shooters feel and play. He created Call of Duty with Jason West, who was the other co-founder of Call of Duty, and he also created Medal of Honor, which a lot of people might not remember. Medal of Honor, it died with the Medal of Honor remake. No. It was just called Medal of Honor. It was about tier 1 operators in the Middle East.
That.
You forgot about that one, right?
Yeah,
it was actually really good.
Oof.
Yeah, it was actually pretty good, but it died because COD existed and Battlefield existed.
Yeah. Justice for Medal of Honor. It was a fine series.
Yeah. So yeah, they created Medal of Honor and Call of Duty. And they also had a hand in another project that the name is escaping me, but it was like pretty well known, and also the precursor for a lot of modern shooters. That oh my God, what the fuck am I talking about? Titanfall. Hello, they made Titanfall, and that Titanfall 2 probably top 3 favorite first-person shooters for me. That game is incredible, but I'm gonna, before I gush over that, let me finish my thought.
Yes.
So Jason Zampella, Vince Zampella.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
They're merging together.
Yeah. Vince Zampella was he's now the GM for the Battlefield IP overall.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just talking about how, oh, we're gonna bring it back to its roots. We're gonna create a nice, well-rounded product, blah 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 blah. Now, to quote Vince, whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people might not get that
Oh,
reference. I know you
that's
do.
that's that's how Titanfall died.
Yeah. Yeah.
There,
Yeah.
EA is still very much committed to the Titanfall
Yeah.
franchise, whatever the
So
fuck that
whatever
means.
the fuck that means.
I guess it means
So
Apex.
so here's my theory. I think that when DICE announced Battlefield 2042, and people like during the marketing for it, people were like, "This looks a little weird," and they were very hesitant towards the game. And then the game came out, and then everyone was like, "This is awful." Um, so it was around that time that DICE or EA promoted Zampella to the general manager of the Battlefield
Yes,
title of the Battlefield franchise.
that's correct.
My theory is that um, his promotion was never was never done to fix 2042. His promotion was to get the franchise back on track for whatever this next Battlefield game is going to be titled. And
That makes a lot of sense just
yeah,
based on like the communications we've gotten from him
yeah,
because like every time somebody had like an issue with the current Battlefield, he never really had any answers about that. It was really just
yeah,
like whatever's next is when he was the most talkative or most responsive about certain things.
yeah. So I am very intrigued to see what comes next for this franchise. And they have five different studios working on it, or four. There's DICE, there's Motive, there's Criterion, there's Ripple Effect. Maybe it's just that if there is the fifth one, it's escaping me.
Yeah,
Um,
I
but
mean,
appa-
it. Go ahead.
yeah, no good.
No, you go ahead.
Um, uh, so these four studios, if there's a fifth one, I'm sorry, I don't remember what it was. Uh, Apparently each studio has their own uh like component of the game that they're working on. Like for example, DICE is in charge of anything multiplayer related.
Makes
Um
sense.
yeah, Criterion is a support studio. Motive is going to be handling the single player component of the game. I think I got those right. I maybe I mixed them up. I'm not
I mean, that
entirely
sounds
sure.
the most logical.
Yeah. So I, we'll see how that works out. I mean, COD kind of operates in the same way now with all the different studios working in Call of Duty. But look, if it's anything like Battlefield Bad Company 1, 2, 3, 4, or Battlefield 1, I will be happy. If we have specialists again or operators in this next game, then the Battlefield franchise is fucking dead and it's never coming back.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, in the situation that's been laid up with all hands on deck, you have one of the legacy
basically godfathers of
yeah,
modern shooters.
exactly, and it's just like because what I was gonna get at is having him as the general manager, all that good on paper, he still has to contend with the two killers in the industry: corporate
Yeah.
overreach and meddling, and bad talent and malicious actors in your workforce, right? So if for some reason he's not able to make, I think what I said was when we talked about Battlefield at a certain point, I'm just like, Battlefield doesn't need an okay Battlefield, it needs a great
Yeah.
Battlefield in
Yeah.
order for it to like be in a
I
comfortable
mean,
position
two
again.
major flops in a row
Yeah,
over the last 10 years. That's a bad
that's
look.
no good. Yeah, that's no good
Yeah.
for the series. So I mean, I trust his guidance for the series. I don't necessarily trust that EA is going to make the right calls because EA is very much spooked right now because between what's going on at BioWare and one other thing that we're not really in the realm in, but I talked about on the news hole is the sports series EA Sports FC which is
just you mentioning that. Just
yeah.
ugh.
I'm not trying to put you to sleep here, but basically, EA Sports FC. If you're not familiar with it, it's FIFA. They rebranded it to its own thing. It's called FC.
Oh, it's
now.
not called FIFA anymore.
It's not called FIFA anymore. It's called EA
Wow,
Sports
all right.
FC, and FC's reception and its monetization engagement was the first major downturn for their live service endeavors there. Which, if you're not familiar, it's called Ultimate Team. Are you familiar with that?
I have heard the name.
I'm not gonna go too nuts here, but Ultimate Team is essentially they found a way to monetize sports trading cards by linking it directly to the type of players you have. Yes. And
Yeah.
I think I could be wrong about this. It's definitely like a decline. I'm pretty sure it's the first time Ultimate Team has declined in its monetization engagement since 2009. So they're in a bit of a spooked place with their single player. Their last single player studio that they really support, Bioware, has this fucking nasty game Veilguard come out and it underperforms. Their sports games aren't like the guaranteed moneymaker. So now that they're looking at this Battlefield game, it's like what I was getting at is corporations when they're spooked, they could go one of two ways. They could go on faith and say like, hey, you helped make all these different things before. Everyone should follow your lead to make another good game, or they could get involved with the process and say like, what's going to make us more money, or what do they think they know better, and we know how that's going to go. And I think we're one way or the other we're going to see that meddling. It's just a matter of how much, because it could just be with like what we've heard before, where they want to make the store and the storefront be more like Call of Duties to get in on that action with like the different weapons and stuff like that. If it stays there, that should be fine, because as much as I'm not keen on that monetization, as long as it doesn't touch the game and what it's doing under the hood, they should be in a better place.
Yeah, they should. We'll see what happens, though.
Yeah, that's the one half of it with the corporate stuff, but then you have to worry about, once again, like if the talent isn't there, they're already at the point where when you're at a point where you're juggling multiple studios, you're already in like dicey waters.
Dicey, get it?
I didn't mean to do that intentionally, but I'll take it. I'll take credit for that. But yeah, it's just like if I was in a position where I had money riding on Battlefield, I wouldn't be in a comfortable position. I think that they are. I don't want to say it's going to be abysmal like the last two, because like I think all of the major players at the leadership position, like the guy that's just like, I want to be on the right side of history, that was making all like the bullshit, I think he's gone. He's been gone for a while. I think they got all the whack jobs out of the creative directive positions, right?
Okay.
I think it's in position to at minimum do a good Battlefield. I don't think the next Battlefield is going to suck. I think the worst it could be, based on everything we know, is underwhelming. I think, and that's not acceptable for Battlefield. It needs to do better than that.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it is.
I
very
mean, it needs to
early,
be
and
on
we'll see
the
what
same
happens.
par as 3 and 4. Like
I would say.
I think
so.
Battlefield 1 is probably regarded as like the height or the peak of the franchise for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, next for me personally, it's Bad Company 2. That game was the best Battlefield has ever been.
I wouldn't mind if they injected a little bit of Bad Company into this new one, just because I think it could benefit from, like, not super scaled down, because Battlefield's all about the big battlefields, obviously, but I think if they made it a little bit more concise and tighter, I think that would be a little bit safer and acceptable. Like, the maps aren't necessarily as monstrous.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
I think they should scale down the map size, and instead of relying on it being a massive battlefield, there needs to be a little bit more going into the design of the maps. Something that you would see in the Bad Company series, and even in 3. I think 3 had really good maps. Like, even like, what was that one map that was like just
Operation
a subway?
Metro was just
that's what that is. Okay, yeah,
that's what everyone remembers from Battlefield 3.
That's like, and it's just like that wasn't a traditional Battlefield map. It wasn't a massive sprawling battlefield. Like, you can needs more of that. What you would expect from a map like that and Bad Company. Not that it should abandon its roots in like everybody's driving vehicles and doing crazy shit. That's definitely important, but I think all of these Battlefield games have kind of a split as far as what you can get out of the multiplayer, and I think it stands to reason that they would benefit from leaning into those more catered and actual like built
Yeah.
experiences, or even like
Yeah.
a smaller map experience. Like what was that one? I think it was in 3, where the map is like just a giant skyscraper that once it takes enough damage, it collapses, and that's typically by the end of
That
the.
was
What was
Battlefield 4. I don't remember the
Yes.
name of the map, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, more like that, and Metro and Bad Company, and I think they could. I think they'll come out swinging. But
Yeah.
there's other things that go into it. Obviously, that's just my 2 cents on the situation. Is I think the whole like lost in this massive war is still important to them, but I think they could benefit greatly from leaning to the more focused gameplay things that people are used to from some of those maps.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
But
not wrong. We'll see
yeah.
what happens though. Like this was the very first bit of marketing that we have gotten so far about the
Yeah.
next Battlefield game,
Yeah, and
and a lot.
I'm kind of with you, looking at it and saying, "Hey, that looks good," but I'm not dumb enough. I'm like I've been hoodwinked
Oh yeah,
one
I'm
too many
not
times.
pre-ordering it. I'm not doing any of that shit.
Yeah.
I need to see more gameplay before I get any level of hype over it.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so yeah, that's that.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything else. I mean, that was kind
No.
of like the biggest thing that I wanted to touch on since that just dropped today.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
think I mean that's pretty much all I got too. Like I said, there is something I want to talk about with the fighting it, but that's going to be like a long-winded thing, and I have to look up a few more things because it
okay,
basically like next week I want to talk about the fighting game community again because like they just wrapped another major series, another major tournament that's been around for a while, and like all of the like horror stories are coming out of it as far as like player decorum and hygiene, and it coincided with another Guilty Gear player being outed as a sex pest with minors, and it's
what the fuck, dude?
I know I'm like that's part of why like I don't want to just like yada yada that. Like I'll probably
Yeah,
have something to say on the just why this is and why that's
yeah,
happening. But I want to collect my thoughts a bit more on that for next
that's
week.
fair.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. All right. Well, I mean, on that note, this was episode 41 of the Pregame Network podcast.
Yes.
For the average 25 of you that come and listen, thank you very much for listening. And we'll be back the same time next week.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.